Hi, welcome to Talk Story to Me. Today we're going to be talking about the latest Cinderella retelling, Cinderella. So, first things first, let's talk about biases. Everyone's got them, I'm no exception. Alright, Cinderella isn't one of my favorite fairy tale stories, even though I love fairy tales in general. And when I first heard that Disney was going to be doing a live-action remake of this movie, I thought it was just going to be a cash grab. Now, for clarification, every movie is intended to make money. That's just the way it is. But some movies are so soulless that you know the only reason that it was done, the only thing that they had any love for, was for the paycheck. And given Disney's track record and all the product placement at the beginning and all the things you can buy, it really looks like that's what it's going to be. But fortunately, it turned out I was wrong. This is a story that is told with a great deal of love. In fact, it was odd because it was this straight retelling of the original Disney retelling, not of the original Grimm fairy tale, which, you know, featured birds pecking out the stepsister's eyes and the chopping off of the toes and the heel. And Cinderella is really, it's a reimagining of the original animated retelling. So there really aren't any surprises in it. You will know exactly what's going to happen if you've seen more than a couple Cinderella stories. You aren't going to be surprised, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it is a pretty well told story, and it is quite beautiful. The sets are lovely. They're rich, they're lush, they're large. The costumes, with the exception of the stepsisters, of course, and even the stepmother a little bit on the edge, they're just perfect for a fairy tale. And the actors were all quite engaged. Cate Blanchett as Lady Tremaine was phenomenal. She owned it, and you didn't see Galadriel, you didn't see Queen Elizabeth or anything like that. You saw Lady Tremaine, and Cate Blanchett just did a fantastic job with that. And Lily James, I really am not familiar with any of her other work, but she did a beautiful job as Cinderella. She portrays her as this wide-eyed, innocent, sweet girl, much more girlish than the original animated, and I think that does work here, going along with her overall innocence. Stepsisters, they were great. The prince, too, he did a pretty good job with it, worked with what he was given. There were a few cringe-worthy moments for me, particularly with the prince's whimsy at Cinderella's antics. It was, pumpkins and lizards. If you watch the movie, you'll get that reference, and you might be cringing just a little bit, too. And as far as that goes, you know, they did give a much better attempt to try and establish a relationship between Prince Charming and, well, here his name is Kit, so he actually has a name, not just Charming, and Cinderella, and that was sweet. They have good chemistry together. I definitely bought the relationship, and Thor, you can go on now. Go. You bought the relationship. You wanted them to be together. It was quite sweet. Now, I will say this, you know, they are not good about letting Cinderella establish any form of boundaries, particularly with her stepmother and her stepsisters. And she's really not the sharpest knife in the drawer. There's a couple points where they just use your head, girl. But it's okay. Not everyone is going to be incredibly gifted at seeing ways out of situations. And the prince, too, I mean, one of the things that I found quite amusing with this is that he's been upgraded a little bit. He has a black best friend and right-hand man, and it's one of the traits of a good guy is to have friends from various ethnic identities outside of his own. The bad guys, no, bad guys are the old white man club. So, and not that that's a problem, it just something I've noticed in several movies that kind of makes me chuckle a little bit. So, anyway, and going back to the story, I will say I was hoping that there might be a little bit more about why Cinderella's mother died, other than get out of the story-itis, which she's fine one moment, then she's gotta go. You know, it's Disney. Mothers don't generally make it. So, all that to say, everyone did a really good job of embodying the role that they were cast to play and making it really quite believable. Now, let's move on to the message, because Cinderella gets a lot of flack for giving a misogynistic message. In fact, whenever there is a debate or a rant dealing with fairy tales, I can almost always bet that it's going to involve Cinderella. And she's accused of being passive, she's accused of teaching girls you just gotta wait for a man, and all sorts of stuff. Well, I don't know that the fear is entirely unwarranted, and I think is entirely warranted, and I think that actually the story itself is not really pushing that. I mean, yes, Cinderella is hardworking. Sometimes she's a little passive, but I think that might be because she doesn't know what to do. But she still works hard, she's compassionate, she is everything that she can be to be a good person. And I will say this, that in the original Grimm fairy tale, Cinderella really had no other options outside of death. None. I mean, prostitution maybe? Not, I think washing dishes and cooking meals for abusive women is a little bit better than being a prostitute. And when Disney originally made Cinderella, they didn't provide more of a reason for her to stay, and I would have loved it if this new version had actually updated Cinderella's reasons for being there, or established a culture that showed this is the reason why it needed to be this way. And they didn't. They tried to give a little bit of a reason. There's a few lines in there toward the middle where they ask Cinderella, why don't you leave? Why don't you do something else? And she gives a response. It was an effort. They were trying. Anyway, the other issue with that is, you know, be kind and have courage. There is no distinction in there. And in this story, being kind equates to being nice to everyone at the cost of taking care of yourself. In a sense, in Purity also, they're portrayed in a way that really suggests Cinderella is just naive. I have to say, I struggle with that. I would like to see some heroines who are portrayed as innocent and pure, but a little bit more shrewd. They have discernment. Now, as I was thinking about this, I realized Cinderella's depiction isn't that bad. Kindness is very important. If there's one thing our world could use more of, it's kindness. In fact, I'm hard-pressed to think of many kids, let alone adults, who I would classify as being too kind. Our inherently selfish nature tends to help us set up boundaries. In fact, it's often harder to teach kids and teenagers and adults. You need to be a little selfless and help people, even when it puts you out. So, you know, there are certain other factors that can make it harder for people to set up boundaries, but there are often other factors that combine to create that situation. I don't think that it's something we have a widespread problem with people being too kind at risk to themselves. Like, if you live in a place where that's a problem, please let me know. That'd be a great place to visit. But really, there are so many cynical, tough, aggressive heroines out there right now. The good at heart, but rough on the outside, typically a little bit selfish, classified really just as strong. And, you know, I think a lot of it started with Trinity in The Matrix, that she's a strong woman, she doesn't take it from anyone. And you really wouldn't call her kind, maybe efficient, and there's a lot that can be discussed there, and I don't want to rabbit trail too much, but I don't think that we're in any danger of turning all heroines into Cinderella. And the fact is that there are people, men and women, who are very kind, who are kind in that way, who are gentle-spirited. They have their flaws, they're not perfect, not saying they are, but there's nothing wrong with that. Those people deserve stories just as much. For a shy, quiet girl, knowing that you can be kind and that you don't have to just pull out a sword or punch someone in the face or get really loud to be strong is important. And the fact is, there really are times when being kind and selfless to someone because you believe it is the right thing, even if it may not be the wisest thing, even if other people wouldn't do it, that still takes a lot of strength. It isn't necessarily passivity. So I do have a few other niggles and things that eat at my brain, but those all would lead to rabbit trails. So long story short, this was a well-told story. I don't think it has a damaging message. It's a beloved classic, and a lot of people are going to enjoy this. Now, for me personally, it's probably not a movie I would buy. Then again, I've never been much of a Disney princess fan. That would be my sister. Her favorite Disney movies were Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and Cinderella. For me, Jungle Book, Sword in the Stone, Robin Hood. We were very, very different girls, things that we liked. Cinderella was just never that magical of a story for me, not because it was bad, but that's just not what I enjoyed. But for my sister Sarah and for a lot of other people who loved Cinderella, the story is so much more. It's like they love it, and there's not a single thing wrong with that. And that's actually part of what made my experience at the theater so memorable. See, when we went, there were all of these little girls dressed up as princesses and fairies, ranging from ages 3 to 4 to 10 and 11, you know, and just all ages in between. And apparently a church or a school who was having an event where the fathers were taking their daughters out, and I think they were going to get milkshakes at Steak and Shake afterwards, something like that. Anyway, a few of them, they'd never seen a Cinderella story before of any kind. They had no idea. In fact, I heard them talking about that. There was this one older sister who was telling her little sister how exciting it was going to be. And they all sat right behind us. And throughout the whole movie, we got a running commentary from these little girls. And of course, I mean, their dads are trying to get them to be quiet, but it's really hard keeping small children who are excited quiet, and it really wasn't a big deal. And they were so engaged with the story, and particularly this one little one with these cute dark curls. She's just, is Cinderella gonna be okay? Is she gonna be okay? What's she gonna, the stepmother broke the shoe, she broke the shoe. I mean, she's almost in tears at some of the points. And all of these little girls, they were so into this story. It was actually pretty incredible because I got to see how this was through their eyes. And when we walked out, the little girls, they were just talking about the movie and what they liked, and none of them were talking about waiting for a man, I will add that. There were, though, a few of the little girls, there's this one scene in the movie where Cinderella dances on her father's feet, and so some of the little girls were trying to do that, and there was another one who was talking about how important it is to be kind, and the one big sister is saying, yeah, I guess if Cinderella's can be kind, I could probably be kinder. And I'm thinking, yeah, she took more out of that as an older sister than I did when I watched Cinderella. But even for those girls who had already seen it, that was obviously a magical night for them. They won't forget it. They looked like they had the time of their lives, and they made some wonderful memories. You know, watching those sweeping shots of a fairy tale land come to life, and seeing these beautiful ball gowns and the dancing and the lush gardens and everything, they aren't going to forget that. And you know, sometimes I forget that. Not every story has to be something new. Not every story has to be nuanced and deep. Sometimes it's okay for a story just to be well told and simple, and even just take you to a place far, far away where everything works out in the end. Well, thanks for stopping by and have a great day. We'll be talking story again too.